Call the meeting to order. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, we have 3 sets of work session minutes. If there's any corrections, comments, or anything? If not, I'll entertain a motion on all 3.
I'll take the motion.
Motion by Shuren.
Second.
Second by Mr. Shelley. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Jones.
Good morning. Thank you. Just update on the projects. We're still working through the streetlight management project, or the component of the streetlight upgrade project. So we're trying to get all that set up for users, and so that we can try and complete this project. The audit for road basins. We had a meeting this morning with CKS and the contractor, Ari Pearson, trying to figure out what needs to be done to close out the project. There was some disagreement on whether they were completely finished or not, and that kind of delayed things. Then we ran into weather issues. It got wet, so they weren't able to get back into there. Now the weeds have all grown up, and so now it's kind of, okay, what do we do at this point? I think the biggest issue is trying to close the project out so we can complete the grant and make sure that we're not holding that up. So I don't know that right now is that time. Because, well, we have to mow all the weeds down, and then all that's laying, and I don't know, it's going to be more of a challenge to try to clean it up, but it's still going to be the same kind of an issue in the spring. So we'll try to want to get the correct grass planted there so that it's, you know, completely satisfies the project. So we're gonna.
Doug, my only experience on that would be if you can get it done in the next couple of weeks, even if it is mowing it, cleaning it, and seeding it, you're going to get this. You'll get the fall and the spring. Because you put it in the spring, it gets washed away with every one of the heavy rains. Yeah, and they're worse in most cases.
Silver line. Compact track loader with all the attachments, so we'll have the mowing, you know, the brush mower, we'll have a rock hound, we'll have all those implements that we can, you know, better handle the project.
But who's responsible for getting it to that? Us or Pearson?
We've kind of worked hand in hand with them, did the initial mowing, so that they could kind of figure out what they did. Like I said, we missed our window when it was just dirt. Right. And trying to, you know, figure out if they were done or not. There were punch list items, and kind of got it wasn't pushed to the top of the pile on anybody's list, unfortunately. So now we're just kind of dealing with it. So I've agreed to us cutting it down, so at least they can see what grading needs to be done, and then trying to get them in as soon as possible. Basically put an email out earlier last week, I guess it was, that, you know, sometime between now and next Monday, we're going to have this done, the mowing done, so they can get in there and do what they need to do. So that's what's prompted the meeting.
What is the main issue right now?
Sorry?
What's the main issue on it right now?
That the final grading wasn't satisfactory.
Okay.
Don't know that it needs to be, you know, pristine and perfect like somebody's front lawn, but there were some imperfections, and there were some issues that CKS noted, and there were some other punch list items that that needed to be addressed. I mean, there's still E&S controls that are out there that need to be removed, you know, once everything's done. But so it was primarily the grading, and the contractor contended that they had graded it to basically their acceptable condition for them, which wasn't for us. So that's where we are with that.
Does that affect the grant?
Excuse me. I haven't been plugged into the grant process. CKS has been handling that. I don't know exactly what the timing is for completion to satisfy the grant, but I know the deadline is probably looming.
I think it's the end of October, so as long as we get this done, they should be fine.
So that can be driving force, which there shouldn't be a problem as long as we don't keep getting rain like we're going for this weekend.
Appreciate you following up. Thanks.
Sorry?
Appreciate you following up with meetings and keep us updated.
Not a problem. We've been working through the athletic field use study. Holly's been spearheading that. We had a stakeholders meeting. Holly, I don't know if you want to talk about it or you want me to, but Holly, Ken, and Joe were on the call earlier this week. Feel free.
Yeah, we had a grant to do a study based on our field usage in the township. As we all know, we're getting 3 new fields coming on board over at Oliver Park in the near future. I'm saying near future, more like a couple of years down the road once they're satisfactory and ready for play. So we wanted to get a feel for what the other sports organizations, maybe some that don't even use our fields right now, what their thoughts were on, will you have a need for our fields in the future, et cetera, et cetera. So got a grant from PRPS or yeah, and we were assigned Derek Dureka, who is from Upper Dublin Township, to spearhead the grant, and he made phone calls to all of the various representatives of the sporting organizations that currently use our fields, and we had a meeting yesterday to discuss those findings, those recommendations from Derek with the stakeholders who would be soccer, football, softball,
boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse.
And it was a very productive meeting. I think the study was very productive as well. I think that we have some direction where we would like to go. We are going to be instituting a semi-annual meeting with the heads of these organizations so we can discuss field usage as things go on. The community center was also included in that because there are fields at the community center that are used on a regular basis. There was discussion of field rotation so that some fields rest and other fields are used while one field's rest. We all know that football is relatively tough on our fields, and that resting them is very important for play, especially when lacrosse often uses the fields the following season. Lacrosse is a March through May sport. It was a very productive meeting. I think it was a very productive study. Derek is wrapping up a few things. We will have another meeting. He's going to be coming to the Board of Supervisors to do a
park board next week.
Park board next week on Tuesday.
Mid-October.
He will be here as well with a presentation to basically go over exactly what was discussed with the stakeholder recommendation.
One of the things that came out of the study, which I thought was really exciting, and I guess just enforcing that we have a great set of resources. Yes. We have more than adequate field situations in almost all cases. We offer great amenities for our community members, and anything we do to continue to improve that will just be icing on the cake.
Is there a sense of, that's a lot of organizations, and the more I talk to some of the people, I guess my concern always comes into, I think it's great that we provide that level of resources. What is the percentage of participants that are actually township residents versus non-township residents? And then also, how many participants are in each organization? Meaning we've got certain field space allocated to somewhat more elite organizations that are not like intramural, that are not, they're like, it's almost like the travel version. I'm thinking Harleysville Eagles a little bit with regards to football, that, is the study going to address, or is that something that we need to look at from that standpoint of, access, overall access, and who's the best bang for the buck in that access? Because there's a funding formula you could get into on that where non-residents pay more, et cetera, but so just curious.
Derek calls that out, and trying to give parameters for township staff that uses guidance when they're making determination on who should use the field and that sort of thing. And one of the specific items was, what percentage of township residents that are in these organizations are you comfortable with? Is it 49? Is it 51? Is it 75? And that's going to be discussed in that study, and that's something that we'll have to wrestle with.
And I'd be fine if, like, the organization came to us and said, we serve this greater area and we've got field space in Franconia, Upper Salford, Worcester, and Lower Salford. So there's a fair share going on.
Yep.
Versus we have 35% Lower Salford residents, but 100% field usage. That's where I just, it's just tough to justify that from the taxpayer standpoint.
And then on the same respect, I also asked the question yesterday to Derek, and I don't know how he will address it or if he will address it, but the organizations that are investing in the facilities in our township, so they're doing fence repairs or additions of fence or addition of fields or field maintenance on a regular basis and paying that out of their budgets, it would be nice to know who's reinvesting.
But
because if you have an organization that's simply using the field and ripping it to shreds and moving on, that's not helping anybody. But if we have groups that are willing to be responsible and respectful to the places, it's a different story. So, exciting times.
A lot of that is the organization volunteers themselves. I can attest there's a couple that I know of coming field maintenance duties, which is good. Everybody
does a great job.
Does it for
Yeah.
does it.
So it is exciting. It's opening
Good.
up a lot of fresh thought.
Good.
A lot of that information, Derek tried to glean from the youth organizations in initial conversations with them. So that's detailed in the report as well. It's not verified information, obviously, but it's just something that, during the conversation, that was a couple of questions that he had, how many participants and, what percentage are township residents, and there's estimates in there. Yeah. So you have some feel for who those organizations are serving.
And that may be something we have to require a roster so we can actually validate that over time.
Yeah, so I think it's a good process, and everybody seems to be happy with the results. And like Ken said, it's that he compared Lower Salford to similar communities that the National Park and Rec Society did surveys on. So again, it's based on survey respondents, but we meet or exceed, I think, in all but maybe 2 or 3 categories of field and court usage in the township. So good information.
Thank you.
Credit for keeping up with the maintenance. I struggle with some.
All part of the job. Township was involved in a rain garden project at the community center. It was a partnership with Parkland Watershed Conservancy, and they received a grant from North Bend Water Authority for the work. Claudio Sanchez and Mike Parfaga's team did a great job doing some minor grading work, created a small retention basin, built an outlet structure, so did grading and seeding, that kind of matting. So that's.
Do we? I was wondering, what are the questions? Do we have any signs around it?
No, I have.
That would be helpful for that might keep people out of it too. A couple education signs.
Yeah. Artwork that they had developed for that rain garden and also for the one at Booker Park.
Oh, good.
Somebody get signs made up and have them installed. Yeah, good community information. Good
Right. And might be people carved out.
But maybe they'll just back over. They have a groundbreaking, I guess it was, we had a local home school group that did some initial plannings that the Watershed Conservancy works with, and there's still about 300 more plants to be installed there. Yeah, they're not done by any stretch. Yeah, so it's a good project. It's a visible project.
So is there any way you can put a natural barrier to keep people out of it, like maybe some rocks or
Once it grows in a bit, it'll be obvious. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. You're right. An obvious target versus a less obvious target.
I still want to get rid of it.
On the Jacob Wright Green Bank Restoration Project, Conservation District and the Watershed Conservancy receiving an environmental stewardship award from Montgomery County. So they're doing some filming and interviews today with staff and other personnel to go over that project for a presentation for the county at their award ceremony. So we get our 15 minutes of fame.
Ready for your close up?
Cape Seal work, they're finally finishing up Power Lane today because of that Pico Power Utility project. Now we've done some other department activities. Yesterday we paved around some inlets going down Indian Creek Road, going towards quarry, just to try to get the water off the road and into those inlets that have been built up along the edge of the road. That the swales were becoming ineffective and just flowing right past the inlet. So trying to get back that problem. Corporate servicing in Reed Park, we're finishing that up this week. We'll have third color to do today, and then we have the lines there to paint tomorrow. So hopefully the pickleball courts and the nets will be up Friday, just in time for the rain this weekend. So, working on tree removal, fine, repairs and cleaning, just, normal stuff this time of year. That's all that I have. If you have any answer any questions.
Thanks, Doug. Any questions for anybody?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thanks, sir. I saw a really, really big fuzzy caterpillar. So I'm not sure what that's gonna mean for your cold and snow this year, but between that and the Farmer's Almanac. There you go. Not good stuff. Chief Edwards.
Yes, brief update on the PD side. The only thing we have is the hiring process continues. Application numbers are still low, like mid-teens. But we might have enough to do a small group of interviews to at least get the backgrounds started and maybe do a follow-up round. Last time we did like 4 rounds of interviews and it worked out. So I want to get the jump on that because everybody is hiring. The only other thing we had was on emergency management, the biannual limerick drill scheduled for next Tuesday evening. Okay. So we'll get the EOC out. We have 4 or 5 members of the PD that are assigned to assist.
Okay.
Get some new members in this year for succession planning type stuff. So should be good.
How are the now that they've been up for a while, the cameras in the parks? We talked about those for many years. Productive,
generally, very good, very clear. Couple locations. Heckler, we needed to put a booster antenna.
And also we put one up at Camp Wawa, which really improved.
Yeah, didn't make it because signal was terrible over there, but that's transmitting.
we found them beneficial.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a couple few Yahoos with their pickup trucks. Were able to identify them. There wasn't a lot of damage, but they couldn't identify. So it's working.
Good. Very good. Anything for the chief?
Very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Buki.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. We've had 39 permits issued so far, but indicate a slight slowdown and fall. So we don't have any zoning hearing for applications for October. We did this one either, of course. In the Planning Commission, so far we have on the agenda, we have the proposed ordinance amendment regarding non-conforming structures and also impervious surface ordinance amendment regarding definitions, coverage, and the definition of surface. You should have there. And we also have Chipotle Land Development, which is a land development down in Blair Rock, the village of Blair Rock. It's an ongoing land development that we've seen periodically through the years with different iterations. They came back again with pre-wing proposal, and they wore the property borders, Blair Rock Crossroad and Martinsville Pike, and they're back in front of them. They revised the plan. They came in with the sketch plan a while ago, revised that now they're in as an officially. 355 Maple Avenue Trail, they took themselves off the Planning Commission last month, so now they're on the Commission agenda. And 45 Bennington Road, that's the proposed museum conditional use in front of that. That's all.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody? Any questions?
Nope.
No, very good. Mr. Manager.
Nothing major to report other than we're moving into our budgeting season, and you will see the first draft fairly soon, next week or two. One of the items that like to put in is a what we're calling a special projects coordinator for the administration, and actually probably pick up some of Doug's duties. You know, the last couple of years there's been a lot of activity, more activity around grants, and certainly moving forward with possibly the Public Works building and the community center. Also, again, I think that was a major part of the discussion yesterday with the parks usage report. And one of the items that came up was a possibility of installing a turf field. And obviously, if we did ever go down that road, that would require a substantial amount of grants, because it's going to be a substantial cost. But additionally, there are grants out there for upgrading the fields, upgrading the facilities. And with that, and just over the past few years, again, with a lot of the transportation, the traffic associated grants, there's a lot of management of all of that needs to take place that's been falling primarily on Holly and Doug. And I would like to bring in another person who can maybe pick up some of that workload from them and let them focus on some of their more primary duties. Also, I hope that maybe that this person might take over from Holly some of the communications stuff. But I think someone, you know, who can focus on that a little more, you know, most of their time as far as, you know, Holly's doing that in addition to all of her Parks and Recs and her human resource stuff. It would just be nice to have a more focused approach to some of these items.
We've run very lean from a staff standpoint.
Yeah,
ever since the Great Recession,
right?
There used to be a lot more heads in that office.
There were 2 more full-time heads in that office.
And when you look at the size of our budget and you look at what we are doing, you know, and you and I have talked about it. I've thought this has been a good idea for a while, and I'm glad we're going to try to look for it for the budget this year. And we need succession planning in the office for getting people to understand that as we have retirements that could happen in the next decade, even just to get them to understand what, you know, all the different functions. No one just does one thing in that office.
Right. No, absolutely not. That's, I mean, it's one of those things that I often refer to as kind of death by 1,000 cuts. So, you know, everybody says, yes, we get it done. But over time, it becomes, you know, that when is the straw going to let you know, get that camel? But we've been running lean. I mean, for a town the size of Lower Salford, you know, to have 7, you know, people in our administration office that do
2 of them are part-time.
2, well, yeah, and you know, and 2 are basically codes and building permits, you know, and 1 is all finance, and you know, and Lori does my work and helps Cecilia, so she's kind of does double duty already. So it would just be nice to be able to kind of spread some of this work around a little bit. So that's one of the major items looking at as far as the budget goes. You know, we'll be talking, department heads and I will be talking over the next couple of weeks, and prior to the 1st of October, we'll have a draft for you to discuss.
Any questions for Joe?
No, I think that sounds fantastic.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's no other questions for any of the staff, we do have reason for a brief executive session on a matter of real estate. So at this point, the meeting will entertain a motion to adjourn. We do not have an intent to return after the executive session.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. See you in October.